right, so today we are going to be talking about mindfulness practices for overcoming financial stress. I don't know, December feels like the month of just taking a couple steps back and just simmering down, reflecting on the year and what worked, what didn't, what do we want to celebrate, what do we want to sort of avoid in the following year to come, but specifically in regards to our finances. And this video couldn't come at a better time because right now the economy is very unprecedented. I feel like we've been in a recession, but we also haven't been in a recession. Like, everyone's sort of been confused as to what is going on. Interest rates are at an all-time high. Inflation is super, super crazy. And I definitely feel like we're in a recession. I mean, that's a whole nother video, just talking about the economy right now and the elites that are trying to prevent the economy from going into a recession. So because we are seeing symptoms of a recession, we really want to be a lot more mindful of our spending and how we are interacting with our finances. It's definitely the time to save, which is why the banks, the national banks that be, and the powers try to increase inflation rates and interest rates so that people can dial back their spending. Because when we spend too much, that creates inflation. And so to try to keep inflation down, people need to be saving more. And so I think this could be a very tricky time if you are someone who isn't really the best with managing their finances. You know, you don't really have as big of a savings account as you like. You have a lot of debt to pay off. This can feel like very scary times, uncharted waters territory. And so I want to set you up for success, right? And to feel financially whole and feel financially well. And so I think these are time and time again, just my experience dealing with finances in the past, working towards some of these financial goals, and dealing with unexpected expenses, because that will happen. Sometimes, a car breaks down or you get this unexpected bill that puts you into deeper financial strain. How do we overcome that? How can we practice mindfulness? How can we be proactive? And if needing to be reactive, how can we be as grounded as possible when reacting to a very stressful financial circumstance, right? And we all know how much finances can impact our overall well-being. I think this is the biggest reason why so much of us are suffering with our mental health today, outside of relationships. Definitely money, right? Trying to survive, having a well enough income that allows you to feel resourced, that allows you to live even just past your basic needs, right? So many people have, their expenses has increased in regards to rent, their mortgage, food, grocery bills are getting higher. And so if you are not in a place to afford the increases in prices, if your income isn't changing, it's not getting any bigger, this can be very overwhelming, right? And can create so much anxiety and really cripple you in how you're able to show up. So, for example, even the best of us, even wealthy people have situations where they're under financial stress. So this isn't a situation that's only applicable to those who find themselves in poverty, people who identify themselves as being like middle income class, just kind of getting by, if not barely. But for example, a couple years ago, I think it was like last year or maybe 2 years ago, I had a speeding ticket. Just to show you, I was not being that mindful on the road while I was driving. I was trying to overtake this other car in a lane, and I realized the lane I was in was about to end, and so I slowed down. But in that moment of speeding up, I guess a police officer saw me going above the speed limit and pulled me over. I was actually kind of late to a photography shoot appointment for my business. And I'm not proud of speeding, although I felt like I was just speeding for like a minute just to pass someone, but I guess he thought it was very reckless driving. And so I got fined, and it was $200 at the time, which is okay, that's a lot, but I'll pay it, whatever. And what happened was I had actually moved around that time, so I was living in a new area, and they had my old mailing address. So For some reason, I kind of forgot about the speeding ticket because I was kind of like trying to wait it out a bit before I had to pay. I was gonna see if I could fight it or something. And I ended up traveling, leaving the country. And I probably got the speeding ticket like October of 2021. And so 2022, January to April, like I was out of the country. I was in Trinidad with my dad, looking after business and like his land. And then I went to Jamaica for a bit to visit my grandma. So I wasn't really in the country. And so I think I thought I had paid for it eventually, but realizing I didn't, because later on last year, maybe like around the summer, I get this letter in the mail from Service Ontario saying that I failed to pay my speeding ticket and now they revoked my driver's license, and to reinstate it, I have to pay like $600 or something like that. By the time you add up all the fees, plus still the $200 speeding tickets, that's $800. And that was kind of hard for me to wrestle with because I wasn't working. Last year I took all of last year off, most of last year off. I only started working maybe towards the end of last year. And so not a lot of income was coming in. I was living off of my savings and other investments. And so, of course, even though I'm living off my savings, I don't want to burn through my savings either. So I had to be very minimal in how I spent my money and just being very intentional about like what I wanted my expenses to look like and what I was willing to expend my very limited finances on. And so to see $800 come in, I was really annoyed and frustrated. But these things happen, and you could say a lot of that is my fault due to my own negligence, sure, but either way, I was $800 more in the hole, and for someone that wasn't really working that year, that's really annoying because I had to go even further into my savings account when I maybe necessarily didn't have to. So, situations like this can happen to anyone. Most of my financial anxiety in the past has come from owning a lot of debt and never having enough income coming in. I feel like that's the worst place to be in, where your expenses is greater than your income. Ideally, you always want to be in a situation where your income is greater than your expenses, because that way you can budget properly and you can start to put that extra income towards paying off debt or building an even bigger savings or starting to invest. But whenever you're in a situation where your expenses is greater than your income, you cannot budget. And I'm actually going to make a video on this too, and why people have a hard time budgeting, because most people should be focusing on increasing their income. So when it comes to overcoming financial stress, I would say first things first is to forgive yourself. Sometimes the financial situations that we're in is out of our control. Maybe you lost your job. Maybe you haven't been able to work. You've had to be living off your savings. So forgive yourself for being in the financial situation that you're in, and just know that, okay, I may have made past mistakes with my finances. I'm not proud of how I maybe spent my money, but moving forward, this is how I'm going to approach my finances for the better. Or it could be, a lot of the times we're hard on ourselves when it comes to being in a lot of debt. And I'm in no way praising anyone being in debt. I think we should really try our best to have as minimal debt as possible. But sometimes our debt is a means to an end. Like I remember university, I bought my first car and I really needed it because I had a job I needed to get to that required me having a car. And even after finishing university, my first job was maybe an hour out of my hometown. And how was I gonna get to this job? And so I had to purchase a car, and I bought a brand new car. It was $13,000. I obviously didn't buy it cash because I never had $13,000. So I had to go into debt in order to have a car so that I can go to work and make the money to pay off the car. And sometimes that's just what it is. So sometimes we take on additional debt. It could be for a car, it could be a mortgage. Most of us can't afford to buy a house cash, so we take on a loan, which is a mortgage, right? That is also debt. Maybe you can, attest to the fact that it's a debt that appreciates over time. So as you're paying off the debt, you're also kind of making money on the home as it grows in value. But regardless, debt is debt. It could even be a business. Maybe you've had to take a loan from the bank to start a business. So I think also forgiving ourselves for being in certain financial situations that were like an ends to a means. Two, I kind of already slightly mentioned this before. I think ways to be mindful around our finances is to really take a look at our spending. Where are we spending? Is it necessary to be spending my money on the things that I am spending it on? what is crucial? What is of most important? When I do a budget with my clients, we always look at what are the fundamental needs? And the fundamental needs of where your finances should be going is always towards your rent, because you need a roof over your head or your mortgage, and food. Food, some people claim it's not a fixed expense. I try to make it a fixed expense and to try to spend within a certain budget for my food. So I consider groceries to be a fixed expense. Transportation costs, whether that's your car, whether that's public transportation, a bus, train, whatever it may be, we need to factor that in because you need to be able to get around, and most likely you need to be able to find some sort of transportation to get to work, to make money. So that's also going to be important. Your phone bill, we need to find a way to connect with each other in this modern day. So having a phone bill, phone plan. So all these things are fixed expenses, basic expenses that we need to account for. So once we account for that, we can, and even if those expenses look like too much, then we really need to minimize and downsize. Maybe the rent that you're paying is way too much. Maybe you need to downsize and find a cheaper apartment to rent at. Maybe we need to find ways to make more inexpensive but still healthy meals. How do we do that? How do we look into that? I really encourage you to not get into the overwhelm and the stress of having to manage your finances, and really focusing on moving forward. How can I spend my money more wisely by cutting back in certain areas, by learning how to budget my resources, and then also increase my income, right? So how can I find creative ways to make more money while still keeping my expenses as minimal as possible so that I can use that extra income to better serve me and to better serve my financial goals? My next point is going to be about setting up a goal. It's very easy to feel overwhelmed around your finances if there's no clear-cut path or strategy. So if you do not have a goal as to how you're interacting with your money and why you're interacting with your money in a certain way, you're going to feel very lost, and most likely you are going to end up in situations that will cause a lot more frustration. Maybe not now, but definitely down the road. So when we think about building like a retirement nest egg, a lot of people don't save until it's too late. They wait until they're like 65 or 62, maybe a couple of years before it's time to retire, and they have either no savings in regards to their retirement, or they didn't save enough. And in that case, now you realize you actually can't retire and you have to continue working when maybe you don't want to work. Some people are a bit more aggressive and they actually will work towards retiring even early. And if that's something that you are interested in and want to work towards, you need to be setting up goals. You need to be looking at your finances on a daily, weekly, monthly basis and religiously checking in with where you're at and pivoting and making changes and adjusting your goals over time, of course. You could have a goal to pay off debt in 6 months and then you lose your job. You may not be able to pay off your debt in 6 months now, right? So things are always shifting. Things are always changing. The goalpost is always moving, and you need to be flexible and adaptable. And the only way to do that is to know with what you're working with. So set up a goal for your debt, your savings. If you had a savings, the more financially secure you'll feel. And so I encourage you to take a look at where you're at in your finances right now and where it feels kind of icky for you, where it feels kind of like, I feel like I could be doing better. Where do I want to be? How will I feel financially secure by achieving said goals? And start to work towards that. Start to have a clearer picture of like, what does it look like to be financially free? What does it look like to feel financially secure? And set up goals based on what that looks like to you. Another way to overcome, some aspects of financial stress, budgeting is definitely a very stressful thing to people. And I know for myself, I wasn't the type of like spreadsheet girl that would go in every month. I had very poor financial hygiene. And I think one thing that I did that really helped shift my relationship with my finances and my ability to budget was a budgeting app. Because I'm someone that's really about convenience. And if someone can budget for me, please do so, right? And I found that through budgeting apps. And there are so many out there now. The main one would be Intuit, Mint, Pocket Guard. Depending if whether you're in Canada or the States, certain apps you have access to, some you don't. But there are budgeting apps out there you can easily download and that you can link your credit card, your debit cards to this app, and it will in real time pull up how much you're spending, what category you're spending in, Some of them have additional features, like Coho is a great app that I love to use. That's started off as a budgeting app, but then also had a cashback option, prepaid Visa that you can load money onto, and loading that money, you can earn certain interest on it over time. They have a credit building feature now. They have a roundup feature, so every time you purchase something, it rounds it up to the nearest like dollar, and that extra money gets invested. So very cool things that are out there right now within the digital finance space. And I think if you're someone that's like not a spreadsheet person, even the idea of having a spreadsheet kind of overwhelms you, try a budgeting app, really having someone else sort of do it for you. And of course, with the information that you receive on the budgeting app, you have to take necessary steps moving forward to save and pay off debt and all those things and invest. But I think it's making the job of managing your finances easier and much less tasking and overwhelming. And of course, everyone's gonna budget in different ways. Everyone's gonna have a different strategy around how they budget, how they track their finances. Actually, if you look in the description below, I am gifting you my free wealth tracker. I like to call it a wealth tracker, not a budget sheet, because I feel like the word budgeting sounds very limiting, and people feel like when you're budgeting, you have to really sacrifice a lot in order to work towards your financial goals. And I want tracking your finances to feel fun. I want it to be a source of encouragement. It's like when I go to track my wealth, I'm setting myself up for a better future, for a financially secure and a future of wealth that I can pass on for generations to come. That is really ideally the goal, to feel whole, to feel financially whole within this lifetime for yourself, but then also the generations that come after you. And then last but not least, just setting up periodic check-ins. So I slightly talked about this before too, earlier on. Having a healthy financial hygiene will create less stress and anxiety and overwhelm because you are being proactive. You are not being reactive. You're not waiting for a bad, challenging moment to happen with your finances before you hop on it and get your shit together. You are trying to be proactive as possible, educating yourself on your finances, whether that's scheduling a call with me, finding some additional support around working towards your financial goals, and just setting up a healthy financial routine as to how often you check in with your finances. I would say if you are someone that's employed, you have a 9-to-5, you have very consistent income coming in, you actually get away with maybe having to check in with your finances less. I would say monthly is perfect. I would say if you are working for yourself and you're self-employed or an entrepreneur, you might need to have more of a handle on your finances. I think you should be checking in more often. So it might actually look weekly, bi-weekly, and still monthly, depending what your comfort level is and where you're at in your financial journey. But of course, the more you check in with your finances, the better. I suggest to my clients, especially those that have sometimes a fear of looking at their finances, getting to a point where just check every day. Check every day to see where you're at. Check your bank accounts, check your statements, check your credit card, your spending. It may seem very scary and at times it may be very triggering, but trust me, working through those fears will help you get to the other side. The more you avoid your finances, the more overwhelmed you're gonna be, the more anxious you're gonna become, the more crippled you are gonna be when it comes to your finances. And I think it's much scarier to not know where you are in your finances than to look at numbers that you may not wanna see, but then know how to move forward. And you don't know how to move forward if you don't know where you're at, right? So definitely checking in with your finances is gonna be super important. And yeah, I hope that makes sense. Like, these are some of the ways that I've over time tried to reduce the amount of stress and anxiety that I have when it comes to managing and interacting with my finances. And I hope that these examples really helped you. And like I said, if you need further support around this area, that is my specialty, dealing with financial wellness. So please schedule a call with me. I offer complimentary 20-minute clarity calls to just get an idea of where you're at, where you want to be, and see which one of my services can help. So definitely check that out in the description below. And don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the little ring bell thing to know when a new video drops, and make sure to sign up for my bi-weekly newsletters. Every other Wednesday, I drop a newsletter talking about some of these themes that I already discussed within my videos, but also just keeping up to date with what's happening in the world, the economy, in regards to your finances, just a personal check-in. So if you want to be the first to hear about cool things that I'm working on, definitely you want to subscribe to the mailing list. So make sure to take a look at that. The link is in the description below, and keep on the lookout for another video. Tuesdays, Thursdays are when my videos drop. Make sure to be there for that, and I'll see you in the next video.